Hello and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. My name is Aaliyah Clausen and I'm one of the team members here. And at Learn, Do, Become, we help people who are drowning in the details of life create simple systems so they can do what matters most. And part of the system that we teach includes the landing spots. And that's going to be the theme of today's podcast. What are the landing spots? Where are they? What do I do with them? And how does that fold into a STEP command central? And for those who are new, STEP is our signature program here at Learn, Do, Become. It stands for Steps to Everyday Productivity, and it's one of our favorite resources to share because we've had thousands of people use it to reduce the stress and overwhelm of life just by creating a simple system. And we also have a lot of free resources here on our website, our social media, and our YouTube channel. So there is not a shortage at all by any means of things to check out and learn from and creating your own STEP system. And if you're interested in reading the show notes of today's podcast, you can find that at learndobecome.com/episode 295. And I will have a written version there as well as some related links. And then additionally, we have a worksheet and a few other resources that go along with the concept of landing spots, and that is available for members of our STEP program. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, hey, this actually sounds really helpful, I could use some extra resources on this, you can find more details about joining our STEP program at learndobecome.com/STEP program. So I'm excited to do an overview of landing spots and then share examples of my own and how I process things, and then kind of teach you how that folds into the larger STEP command central as a whole. So the first thing I want to talk about is that there are kind of three different things that we consider landing spots, and one big thing that we do not consider a landing spot, and it's probably one of the most important things to understand. So maybe I'll start with what is not a landing spot first. The inbox, which we talk about quite a bit here at Learn, Do, Become, the inbox is not a landing spot. The inbox is where you put items that can wait until you do your weekly review to be processed. So anything that goes in your inbox is kind of just a holding space for that week-long period until you do your weekly review. Everything in the inbox can wait until you have that time to do a weekly review. Nothing is time sensitive. Nothing is super urgent. It all can wait. It needs to have some kind of action taken. Maybe just a simple message needs to be sent, or maybe you need to file something away. So everything in the inbox needs an action taken, but nothing is urgent and nothing ends up there initially. So for example, when you bring the mail into your house, the mail does not go into your inbox. The inbox is only for things that you've sorted through a tiny bit, looked through, and then determined, okay, this can go in my inbox after it hits one of my initial landing spots first. So things will come into your physical and digital life. You'll take a quick look at them, and if it's something that needs an action taken but can wait, then it can go into your inbox. But the inbox should never be the first place you put things, unless obviously if you look at the item and you say, this is an inbox item, then it can go right there. But the goal is to not have your inbox be on the kitchen counter where everyone can just have a free-for-all and put papers and random things in there, because if something's urgent or if something needs to be taken care of sooner, you're going to miss that. So the biggest thing that I hope you take away from this beginning part is the inbox is not a landing spot. It's the place that comes after your landing spots once you've determined that it's okay to put that item in your inbox until your weekly review. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the three things that are considered landing spots. The first is physical landing spots. The second is digital landing spots. And the third is your capture tool. Now, the first two, the physical and digital landing spots, will look a little bit different for everyone. I'll detail some of mine, but obviously we have our unique house setups, office setups, we have cars or backpacks, briefcases, diaper bags, you name it. We all have different physical places that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then digitally, that varies even more sometimes than I think the physical things do. We have different messaging apps and emails and all these different inboxes, apps that we check in with, and there's just so many things digitally that come our way. So it will look a little bit different for every single person. And a lot of times, the things that end up in these physical and digital landing spots are things that kind of just happen to us, right? We're not asking to receive emails. We're not really asking to receive text messages or just notifications from apps. They end up in our inboxes, or the physical items just end up in our lives, and we didn't necessarily ask for those items to begin with, right? So those things are just kind of coming at us physically and digitally. But then the capture tool is more unique, because the capture tool is a place, either physically or digitally, that you've designated to capture the different items that come into your mind, whether it's ideas or little tasks that you want to complete, a future project that you want to do, things like that. And I'll share some examples of what ends up on my capture tool. But the capture tool is something that you're very intentionally writing things down on and recording so that you can then process them into your Step Command Central. And I think the capture tool gets overlooked sometimes as a landing spot, because people are thinking, oh, well, I have my emails and my texts and my physical places and all these things that I need to check. But then they forget that when they're recording things that come to them on a daily basis, that's also a landing spot. And that sometimes needs to be made a conscious routine to check that each day or every couple days. But as you start being more familiar with that and saying, not only do I have the physical and digital landing spots, but I also have my capture tool, that's really going to ensure that things don't slip through the cracks. All right, so those are the 3 things that we're going to be talking about, and I'll share some personal examples on. But I hope that that is helpful in seeing that we all have a different setup. It's not going to look one size fits all for everyone, because we're all working on such different things and we have such different setups in our physical and digital lives. So when do we process the things that end up in these spots? That's going to look a little bit different for each person, but I tend to look at everything in my physical landing spots each day. I try to do a reset of our apartment with my husband each night once our kids are in bed. So that's something that's helpful for us to do, is look at our landing spots, make sure everything is tidied up and all ready for the next day. And looking at these spots once a day tends to work really well for us. But if you have a busy life, or if it's just you living at your home, or just you working in your office and you're not making that many items physically come into your life, or there's not that many things being given to you, then maybe that's something that could be done every couple days. But the goal is to make sure that we don't have piles accumulating in the different parts of our lives, or whether it's your car or your purse or things like that. Sometimes you could go a couple days without cleaning your purse, or a couple days without looking at what's been accumulating in your car. But again, that's going to be unique to you, and you'll just have to consider how much is coming into your life, and is it creating a big mess or a pile every day, every 2 days? If so, that'll let you know when you need to address those items. And with things that are digital, this is where I'm a little bit more flexible, because obviously not every text or email or incoming digital thing needs a response right away or that same day. But I do have a routine each evening where I look at my messages, make sure nothing's urgent, and I try to get back to anything that is urgent or deal with things that are more time sensitive really quick, and at least sometime that day by the evening. And then if I have a couple lingering digital things that need my attention in the next couple days, I can handle those as appropriate. And as you hear me talking about routines don't just happen. I really recommend making those one of your current projects to establish a brand new routine. So if you're thinking, I really don't have any routine for handling my text messages or my digital items, or I don't have a routine for resetting my home or my office or my car, that might be something that you consider as one of your current projects for the month. And it's usually easier to only do one new routine at a time, or maybe 2 new routines at a time. The goal is not to overwhelm yourself, but as you're hearing me talk about routines and things that I'm doing on a regular basis, if you're thinking that, wow, I'm kind of missing that component of my life, that would make things a lot easier, that might be a great thing to consider adding to your current projects list at the next month, or whenever it's appropriate for you to add that to your projects list. And then finally, with the capture tool, I do try to process my capture tool at the end of each day. And one thing that's more unique about my capture tool is, instead of it being a physical piece of paper or a digital note in my notes app or somewhere else that you write things down digitally, Those are kind of the two places we recommend people create their capture tool, whether it's a piece of paper or a digital note that they can refer to while they're on the go, or there's somewhere that they're going to naturally open and write things down in. But I actually use my email inbox as my capture tool. And the only reason I do this is because I have my email inbox down to 0. That was a big project of mine to make sure that I could get rid of all the backlog in my email and then make sure I have a good routine for handling all the incoming emails. So if you're currently in a place where your email inbox is in the thousands or hundreds of thousands, we totally get that. We have so many people in our community who have been in that same place. So that might just mean that your email inbox is not a super reliable capture tool for those incoming items in your life. And then that might be something you could work to in the future. But maybe for now, a piece of paper or a note in your notes app digitally is a better spot for your capture tool. So just wanted to let you know that that is my email inbox. So it is kind of nice to have that as my digital landing spot for regular emails, but then also my capture tool for emails that I send to myself whenever I think of something. But again, if you are not in a place where your email inbox can handle that kind of thing, or that you don't trust that it won't get lost in the other emails, then I would probably recommend keeping that separate for the time being. But that's definitely something that you could work toward if you feel like that would be helpful to you. All right, now what do we do with these kind of things that come into our life? So we already talked about how usually once a day looking at these different places is recommended, but again, you'll have to look at your own incoming items and decide on your own timeline. But what do we do once we are ready to process the things that come into our lives? So I'm going to compare this example to getting the mail, because I'm pretty sure most of us get mail and we all have a wide variety of things that are junk mail or things that are important and stuff like that. So as I'm talking about the mail, you can compare this to different items that you might have your kids bring home from school, or that you might be given by a person at work, or that might land in your house otherwise, or your car or your purse as you're going through your day. So first is, as you're sorting through the mail, look through and see what items are trash, because I'm sure we all get junk mail or things that we just don't need. So anything that is trash, you can either throw in the trash or the recycle, whatever it needs to go into. But just get rid of the things that are just trash or don't need to be there. And then anything that is super urgent or like an ASAP item, whether it's a really important piece of mail or an important message or something, use the 2-minute rule when you can. Some things that need to be handled right away, whether someone needs an urgent text message sent to them, or if you have a piece of mail that you need to fill out a special form and mail it back the next day or something like that. We all have those urgent things that we need to look at right then. And sometimes we can use the 2-minute rule to handle it right then and there. But sometimes we need to handle it later that day, or just become something that we add to our calendar where we have to handle it that day. So we have trash that we just sorted out, and then we have urgent items that we're taking care of either right then and there or sometime later that day. And then all the remaining items can wait until your weekly review, as long as they have an action required. And then those things go into your inbox. So there's those 3 tiers that we can go through, where we have the trash, just get rid of that. Anything urgent, pull that out and handle that right away or as soon as you can. And then everything remaining still needs some kind of action. And then that's when it goes into your inbox. So hopefully that makes sense of why the inbox is not a landing spot. It becomes a place where it's the secondary landing spot, technically, where you have the first place, which is a catch-all for anything and everything. And then anything that we've sorted through and looked at that truly belongs in the inbox will go in the inbox. And this is something that is a game changer for a lot of our steppers, because many of them say, well, when I get to my weekly review and I'm trying to process all of the items in my inbox, it takes me hours to get through everything. And we found that a lot of people are putting their inbox as a landing spot, and then of course it doubles or triples their workload, because they're having to handle things that maybe shouldn't have been added there to begin with. So if you found that processing your inbox is not feeling very seamless, that might be an indicator that you're putting too much in it right away, and that you might need to be a little bit more selective with the things that end up in the inbox. All right, and now I'm going to share some examples of my own landing spots and how I navigate them and the kind of things that end up in them. And we actually got a really great suggestion from somebody in our Step Mastery Facebook group. They said, can you touch on having people eliminate or consolidate landing spots? Because I feel like that's not something that we hear about very often. And I really loved the idea because there's no rule that says you need to have 6 physical landing spots and 25 digital landing spots. I think a lot of us do have quite a few landing spots digitally, especially when we have different messaging apps and social media and all stuff like that. But when you truly look at where your most important communication is coming in and where the items are coming into your life, there's probably a couple places where you can eliminate those landing spots. Maybe there's a social media app or two that you're going to delete and not use anymore to receive messages. Or maybe you're going to consolidate 3 email inboxes into 1. My husband, when we first got married, actually had 6 or 7 email inboxes, and he was so stressed trying to check all of them every single day. And I said, well, you can forward all of them to each other, so you just have to check one. And he was like, oh, that actually would be so easy. And then when he did consolidate all of his emails, then it just became one landing spot for all the emails that he got from school and work and a different personal email address. It really alleviated that stress for him. So if you're thinking that you have too many landing spots, you're always welcome to consolidate the landing spots. And if you have people in your household who are setting things in 4 or 5 different places, and that's not super practical for you or them to process the things that are incoming, there could be a new family rule or a new household rule that says, hey, we're not setting things in XYZ places anymore. When you have things to give to me or when you have things that come into the house, they only go in this spot by the front door or this spot in the kitchen. Something like that, where you can really set a boundary for saying we're not going to have 8 different places that I have to check every single day for items. The only place we're going to set items from now on are here and here. Same thing with workplaces. If you have people who are giving you items left and right, setting things on your desk, putting things all different places, you could say, hey, I have this one tray where you put items that need my attention, and that's it. I'm only taking items right here. And hopefully that should alleviate some of the stress or overwhelm that might come from your landing spots. And I love that idea. So that could be a future project to work on consolidating landing spots, because sometimes it won't take 2 or 3 minutes to really tackle that, or it might take longer than a 10 or 20 minute next action. So if you think that might take some more effort and work, you can put that on your next in line or someday projects list and know that it's safe and you can get to that as a future current project when the time is right. All right, so now onto my physical landing spots. I found that I have pretty much 4 right now. We have a desk in our living room where my husband sets things that need my attention. We have a front area near our car keys where we set our mail and set things that come in with us from the house. And sometimes things end up there at the end of the day, but I try to move it to the desk in the living room so that it kind of flows into the house and then I can process it from there. I have the car, whether things get given to me by my children or if I'm running errands and I just start accumulating things. And then I also have my diaper bag, which is also kind of like my purse. It's all rolled up into one. So everything I get from errands and being out and about, I found that 2 physical places in the house and then 2 that are more out of the house, like the car and the diaper bag. Those are the 4 that I check the most and that I feel like everything's consolidated to those 4 areas. And growing up, my mom would actually have a pile in the kitchen that we were able to add to. So whenever we brought papers home from school or church or anything like that, she said, hey, put your papers on this one corner of the kitchen counter, and then I'll take a look at them, where she would see if anything needed a signature for the next day, or if we had a field trip form that needed to be looked at. She would handle all of those urgent items and process them and give them right back to us. And then anything that was more long-term, she'd put in her inbox later on. So I loved that she was able to incorporate us, the kids, in her landing spot routine. And I think that we'll do that eventually in the future when our kids are a little bit older and when they're bringing home things as well. So I check these physical spots once a day. And, I have a pretty good routine. When I'm leaving the car, I grab any trash or any papers, receipts, everything that I had with me in the car, I try to bring right into our house. And then that can be set in our entryway area where we have one of the landing spots at home. Same with the diaper bag. Once a day, toward the end of the day, I try to reset the diaper bag. So make sure that we have everything taken out. When I grab the mail, I just throw it in the diaper bag, just kind of keep it all together. And that helps me to process things once a day and know that nothing's going to get lost in the shuffle. And it really is nice having just those 4 spaces to look at and having those routines of every time I get out of the car, I'm just going to take everything with me, and then I can do a quick sort of the items. And more often than not, the majority of the stuff in the physical landing spots doesn't need to be kept. It's usually trash or junk mail or, receipts that I already took care of, stuff like that, where nothing really needs to be kept except for the occasional piece of mail that has an action attached to it. As far as the digital things, I have 5 or 6 messaging apps that I look at, and that includes a messaging app that I have like an extended family group chat. I have a smaller immediate family group chat. I have Slack for my team messaging for work stuff. I have my general text message inbox. And then I have one more of that another friend and I use to stay in touch. So I have these 5 messaging apps that I try to look at each day. And obviously I'm not perfect at handling every text message every single day, but I try to at least get back to the urgent ones, at least by the end of the day. And then with emails, I have my email inboxes consolidated. So all my personal emails go to one place, and then all of my work emails go to another. And I try to check in on my inboxes every day. Sometimes I check a few times a day if I have more flexibility. And I try to process the items that come into them. I'll link a podcast in the related links with all the different step processing questions. So if you're thinking, well, now that I have all the items here and I know what actions I need to take, well, how do I process what needs to actually happen and put it into my command central? So I'll link a podcast that has our 8 processing questions, and that will be really helpful in knowing what to do with the items once they're in front of you. So once you've sorted through the trash, you've sorted through the stuff that needs your attention right away, everything that's remaining that needs to be processed later on, the step processing questions will be super helpful. And a lot of the emails can last until my weekly review. Most things that I receive by email are not urgent. It's just something that I'll want to do and process during my weekly review. So I have a little folder where I put those emails, and it's part of my routine to check that folder and handle my digital items that came into my life that week. So the same way I put my physical items that need attention in my inbox, I have a digital section of my email inbox that gets have everything sorted there, and then I can look at it once it's time to do my weekly review. That way I'm only handling the urgent stuff and deleting any of the trash emails right away. That really feels a lot more manageable. And again, if you can consolidate or eliminate any of your digital landing spots, that might make things a lot easier for you. And that just is up to you to determine what kind of things can be streamlined and what kind of things might need a solid routine of checking in on. If you're finding that you're missing text messages or you're missing important emails, that might need to become one of your more conscious routines or things that you're putting on your calendar and giving yourself time to do each day so things don't slip through the cracks. And I want to address one thing about handling backlog. I know that a lot of people who come to Learn to Become have several thousand emails, maybe hundreds of texts, different digital things that are all accumulating. Everything that's currently there already counts as backlog, because we all have things that need to be processed through and worked through, and it's not possible to handle all of that at once. So as you're looking at creating solid routines to support, especially the digital environment that you have, I know a lot of people also have file folders or piles of papers or just a lot of things that they want to sort through at some point in the future. That's not possible to do right now with all that you have going on outside of just organization. You have a lot going on with loved ones, with work, with school, with anything else that you might be dealing with. And it's tempting to say, well, I need to figure everything out before I can move forward. But I want to encourage you to put all these different things about handling email backlog and text backlog, file sorting backlog, anything that you have going on, put that on your next in line or someday projects list, because the backlog is going to be there. But what you do with the incoming things right now is going to set a pace for how you feel every single day and how you're able to be reliable when those urgent texts come in, or how you're going to feel when you're processing your email inbox and knowing that, okay, I handled all the urgent stuff, I got rid of the trash, everything remaining is going to wait until my weekly review, and I feel really good. I think it's just so freeing to know that when your backlog doesn't have to be at the front of your mind, and you can know, okay, everything is safe on my next in line or my someday projects list, and I know it's there. When the time is right where I can make it one of my current projects, I'll be able to work on it then. But right now, I need to set up a solid routine for handling the incoming things. And of course, there might be a few texts and emails in the backlog that are more important and urgent, and you can always go back and pull those out and do something with those as appropriate. But most of the things that are sitting in the backlog are not urgent. There's not really a next action that needs to be taken right away. It's just something that we feel like we have to get to, and it feels stressful. But when we know that it's safe on our future projects list, and that right now I need to focus on the incoming stuff and get a solid routine so that I'm not creating more backlog for myself, I think that can feel a little bit more encouraging, and knowing that everything is safe as a future project. So if you're feeling that way with your digital landing spots especially, I want to encourage you to just focus on what's coming in today. And maybe you can go back a week or 2 weeks and just double check and make sure there's nothing urgent or nothing falling through the cracks. But at the end of the day, what's coming in right now, if you can create a solid routine for that, it's going to feel so good, and you're going to feel so light and so encouraged as you're having these things come in, and you know exactly how to handle them and how to process them into your command central. So I wanted to encourage you to look at that with your digital landing spots, and also give yourself some grace. We are in this huge era of just technology overload, so many different apps, so many different messages coming in. It can definitely feel impossible to handle all of them all at once. So give yourself some grace and patience as you create a routine and a system that works best for you. And the final thing I want to talk about is the capture tool. So I've mentioned my physical landing spots. I have 4 or 5 of those. Digital landing spots that I do have a lot more of, but I have a solid routine out for checking. But finally is the capture tool. And as I mentioned, I use my email inbox as my capture tool. But before I did this, I did use a simple note in my notes app that came with my iPhone. So I just have the capture tool pinned to the top of my notes app, because I don't usually carry around a pen and paper. So if you're a pen and paper person, that's awesome. You might have a little sticky note or a page in your planner that's your capture tool. That all works perfectly, but I typically only have my phone with me, and so that's why my note on my notes app was so helpful. And now that I have my email as my capture tool, I just send myself an email whenever I have something come into my mind. And I want to share a few examples of what ends up on the capture tool, because I think with the physical and digital landing spots, it's pretty easy to say, okay, physical is like receipts and mail and papers, digital is emails and text, but what do I put on my capture tool? This is any idea that comes into your mind that needs some kind of action taken. For example, we met a new friend at the library who just moved into town, and her husband is a few years ahead of mine in medical school. So I said, it'd be so fun to get our husbands together to talk about medical school. I could talk with you and learn more about what you guys have done. It'd be fun to have your family over. So I sent myself an email that said, invite new friends to dinner. And then I was able to process that later once I was processing my capture tool. I try to process it every day or every 2 days, depending on how things are going. So because it is my email inbox, I'm seeing it every day, but sometimes it takes me a day or 2 to process it because we have a lot going on with our little kids and all the work and stuff we're doing. So I was able to add a calendar reminder to Sunday when we do our Sunday planning to text our friends and invite them to dinner. So that was super fun just to know, all right, I have this in my calendar. We're going to make it happen. We're going to get to know these new friends. And because I took a second to record that thought that came into my life, it wasn't lost and I was able to do something with it. And now we're going to have dinner with these new friends and learn from them. So I'll share a couple more things just quickly. I won't share exactly how I processed them, but we have a whole podcast on processing questions that I will link in the related links on our podcast show notes. So another item that I emailed myself for the capture tool was record blank item on the budget spreadsheet. We're trying to be better about recording every single thing that we're buying. And I know there's lots of apps for that, but right now we're just using a spreadsheet. So I just wrote that down. The next was send a Facebook message to a friend. I was thinking about someone and I wanted to reach out to her. The next was add a new project to my next in line list. And this is something that I want to encourage you to do because a lot of times when we have fun ideas of projects or things that would be really meaningful to do, it's tempting to try to start working on them right away or saying, well, I'm sure I could fit this on my current projects list somewhere. I can just fit it in with the rest of the things that I'm doing this month. And while that is tempting, it's not always sustainable because that's how we add way too much to our lists and way too much to our plates, and we're not able to handle all of that. So whenever I have an idea for a new project that comes to mind, I just email it to myself and then I can add it to my next in line projects list. I store my projects list digitally. And it's so great to be able to add these future projects to my list because I know that they're safe and that when I'm ready to select some new current projects, I have this whole list of things just waiting for me, and it's always fun to pick something out. So I had an idea to make this a cookbook that I want to put together for our family, and instead of working on it right away, I sent myself an email and said, add the cookbook project to my next in line list. And then I was able to add that to my list later on when I was processing my capture tool. So I just love that any idea that comes into my mind, whether it's something I need to do as a next action or a calendar item, someone I'm thinking about, a future project I want to do, that all gets recorded in my capture tool. And then because I'm processing it every day or two, it ends up in my Command Central and I'm able to schedule meetings with new friends. I'm able to keep our budget spreadsheet up to date. I'm able to reach out to people that I'm really thinking about and wanting to stay connected with. And then I'm able to add meaningful projects to my future list without them getting lost. And it's so encouraging to know that every item that's coming into my life, physically, digitally, or even mentally, has a place in my Command Central, and it's going to be there to support me and all the things that I'm doing, and it's going to help eliminate the piles of physical and digital things so that they don't build up and they don't overwhelm me. So this is your encouragement. If you're looking for some encouragement or a sign that now is a good time to streamline your landing spots and start making it a routine to check them every day or two, this is it. I'm encouraging you to get started, whether it's something so small and just as simple as identifying your landing spots. And then later on, you can work on making it a routine. But when we're aware of where all of the things are coming into our lives and where they're hitting us physically and digitally and mentally, it's so helpful to just see all of that and then be able to create a plan from that later on. So this is just lots of encouragement for you. If you have things that you'd like to share, if you have some things that just stood out to you, or you've said, oh, this is actually super helpful. I know I'm going to do XYZ with my landing spots. We'd love to hear your little step wins. We have a free Facebook community that we have for all of our Learn to Become community members. And you can find that at learndobecome.com/FBfamily. And we'd love to hear from you there if you have any step wins that you would like to share. And then additionally, if you're looking for more support on creating your Step Command Central and even more support on how to set up landing spots, your inbox, and all the different parts of your Command Central, we'd love to invite you to check out our STEP program. And you can find all the details for that at learndobecome.com/STEP program. Thank you so much for joining today's podcast, and we can't wait to see you next time here on Learn to Become Radio.